so welcome back to Tender Talks, and today we are going to talk about the topic of self-sabotage. Um, this isn't your area of expertise, but
That's right,
um,
George.
we're just going to have a conversation about it because it's a really interesting topic and there's a lot to learn about it.
Yeah. So not my specialist area, but I have some experience with working with, I'm familiar with it because of working with clients rather than having experienced any of it myself, or maybe little elements of it, but not my specialist area.
Cool. So, what would you define it as?
It's when we self-sabotage is when we might do what could be deemed as sort of self-destruct behaviors that come back on ourselves rather than it could seem so straightforward in a process of I want to get to to place B, and I'm putting things in my way all the way along, so that's preventing me from getting there. And it could show up in being in a new relationship where you keep doing things which is potentially going to put the other person off, when really you want to keep them. Or it could show up in ways of when you're already in relationship, maybe being very difficult to live with because of levels of anger or frustration, and not, sort of almost, it might look like you're taking it out on the other person, but really you're destroying what is good that's actually between you and the other person. Um, and it can be so associated with things like procrastination, and so that you can't get yourself out of that mode either, so preventing yourself from doing the steps that would make a difference to get you out of that hole.
So,
Self-sabotage can also look like things like eating, being in a cycle of um, disordered eating. So maybe binge eating as a way to punish self. Um, and I guess, is self-harm a form of self-sabotage?
okay.
Yeah,
So
that's an
it
interesting concept.
so for whatever going to A to B looks like, so from going to A and then getting to B, so not being in a relationship to being in a relationship, or even like if we put it in like I'm being unfit to getting fit, it's
Mm,
like that that version of yourself in that better place is, oh, actually being here, A, is where I'm comfortable, where I
yeah,
know I am, and I know I can manage it here. And yes, B looks really nice, and but do I deserve it? Or what if something goes wrong? Or like what if I try and get rejected? Or there's so many elements that play on the mind there, maybe that then stops
yeah.
then that's the roadblocks, and that's the procrastination, that's the not pushing past or going over or putting things in the way to not get
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And I'm not good enough for that. So the self-esteem aspect.
there.
I don't deserve that. And people really truly believe that. I've heard people say that. Um and it's so sad when they might actually be experience something like extreme loneliness that's been going on for a long time, and then get somebody new in their life and then feel they're not deserving of that person who's really good to them and could be the bit that would really solve that loneliness aspect. So it's like they get so close, you know. That's the sort of things I've known people do, is put things in the way of the good things that can happen for them.
So that is that again, it in reflection, it is a form of self-harm because
Mm,
it's it's not allowing the natural progression to take place. It's not allowing, it's like blocking something. It's like,
yeah.
so how would somebody maybe start to it's again, it starts to, it's learning to love themselves, to allow themselves to get that thing that they deserve and should be entitled to, but
Mm,
right here they don't feel like they are. So the process from here to here would look quite similar to what we've discussed before.
Yeah, although that would seem like a big challenge, really, to change core beliefs about yourself.
Mm,
That might seem like that would be too big a step almost. Like if we can put in smaller steps. So starting with awareness, I suppose, rather than oh, I'm going to change the way I think, which is a good, it's not that that's wrong, it's just that that might be hard. Whereas if we start with something like becoming more aware of our patterns, so that can happen by journaling, so noting down what's going on, or note, and then from that you can notice your patterns. So when something like this happens, then I notice I do that. And by knowing yourself well enough, you're going to be able to identify the patterns and then put steps in place to change those patterns. So it's very much self-awareness is really key here, and one of the first steps. And of course, what I know about such things as self-sabotage and procrastination and fear of failure is a lot of that comes with ADHD. Now, what I also know about ADHD is it's really hard for them to do the normal, what we might describe as mindful practice, as meditation. So we might have to think of different ways, because meditation leads to better self-awareness, right? So if we think of other ways, so because that could easily become another block. So it's like saying, okay, so you need to get better with your self-awareness. And in order to do that, it would be helpful to meditate. And then somebody with ADHD is going to say, I can't meditate. Don't sit me alone with my thoughts. I'm not going to be able to do that. So there we have the block.
yeah.
Let's think of another way then. If that doesn't suit you, if it's hard to sit with your thoughts, I would first of all invite you to try for 1, 2, 3, 5 minutes at a time, and not try too big a step of like a 15, 20 minute meditation.
Hmm.
Use guided meditation so that you're not alone with your thoughts. Um, and then, but if that still doesn't work for you, then find other ways to be mindful and get in the flow of something that you enjoy. And then try and bring some awareness to that experience. Like, how am I, like, say it was riding a wave,
Yeah.
and it would be like, okay, so practice being mindful in that. So first of all, it might be, what does it feel like if I put my wetsuit on when it's dry? And it might be, it's got some sand in it. How does that feel on the body? How does it feel to put my toes in the water but maybe don't have wetsuit boots on, so you can feel the cold,
Hmm.
you know? And then what does it feel like when the water comes up through the wetsuit and it's getting cold, you know? Right to the point of being in the moment of riding the wave, and what does that feel like?
Yeah,
So that
that
you
whole
can kind of,
process there is literally the same as meditation. Like
yeah,
just having that awareness of
yeah,
each single step, and everything you've just said there is exactly how I enter the water. Like I feel every single thing. So it doesn't have to be a meditation. It literally can be something that brings you joy, that takes your mind and fully focuses it in. That flow state. It's
that's it.
the same with riding a bike. Like you can't do anything but focus on going downhill on a bike, because you're if you don't focus on it, you're on the floor. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And recently I've met somebody who juggles with clubs, but also with little juggling balls.
Hmm.
Another thing that you can't be thinking of other things while you're trying to do that. Well, if you do, you're just going to end up with them on the floor all the time.
Yeah.
You don't come to any harm, but finding something that creates that flow state to increase awareness, and in order to kind of make sure that you do increase your awareness, try and tune into, how do I feel before I'm playing with these juggling balls, or entering the sea, and really note the what's going on in the body and the mind before, during, and after. And that's a good way of starting to develop more self-awareness on what's going on in the body and the mind.
Yeah. So like that self-awareness, for somebody that is in a real place of that self-sabotage, like, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm like, I can't do that, like, and it's that those core beliefs, and then have been formed over a long period of time, and then the limiting beliefs that have like gone maybe on top of that. So it's like the core beliefs I've ever known, plus all of the evidence of the limiting beliefs going on top. It's again,
Yeah.
I'm unpeeling all that in that slow process of,
Yes.
oh, hang on a minute, why do I feel like that? Like,
Yeah.
what have been the things that have made me believe that? So
Mm.
it's almost taking yourself out of the equation and looking at it from above, and detaching yourself from maybe that situation, and being like, right, this person feels like this, and these are the factors that have allowed them to feel like that. Looking at it from above and being like, oh, actually, that makes more sense now. So now I understand that it's not me, it's these
Mm.
factors that have affected me, and I can do something about it.
Yeah. So being more objective to your own process, taking that distance and seeing
Mm,
yourself from a distance. Yeah, absolutely. That would be a good way to do it. And it reminds me of a friend who's recently did her 3 week stint with her job that she does, an intense job. And it comes to time off, and she felt very much like she needed to reset herself. She's got ADHD, so she went camping, and she used the grounding technique of like always being barefoot in the field, and she's come back completely reset, so it's absolutely done what she needed it to do. And I wondered if it was the grounding that helped her get in, because she's sleeping on the ground. I mean, yeah, she'll have had some form of mattress, but to be so close to the ground, to have your bare feet in the ground, to be in the sea and on the sand, is going to be very good for rebalancing, isn't it? Our nervous system and becoming more grounded.
yeah,
So it's how, and that would be just like a flow thing as well, isn't it? It's like the same sort of thing there. It's like
yeah,
getting yourself into that kind of drop down state in order to be able to then access what's going on for yourself. Because when we're in a heightened state of distress or busyness, that will prevent us from really seeing what's going on within ourselves.
yeah. And then taking that sidestep and
Mm.
being, "Oh, actually, let's just sit here for a while," allows that then to come into play.
Yeah.
That so that grounding element,
Mm.
we're going a little bit off topic here, but I think it's important. Um, if I had told myself like 3 or 4, 5 years ago that if I just go out and stand on the ground, I could calm down or whatever it was, I'd be like, what are you on about? It's just like it wouldn't have even entered my mind.
Mm.
But if I look back at evidence, um, especially when I traveled like in the van, and then be like getting like waking up and instantly going outside and being outside and in nature, it brought a whole new sense of, oh my God, like what is this, and what, like, why do I feel so content and so free and so happy, and I associated with the travel, but actually it was just from those small steps, because I can get that same feeling being in the same place, not traveling to all these amazing countries and whatever else. It's just that feeling of like, oh wow, like connection, I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah.
and energy. Like, so the energy transfer from nature to the body,
Mm.
looking at it
Mm.
and doing all the research, it's the most natural form, isn't it,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like
that's right.
energy transfer.
Yeah. And you know why it comes up through the feet so well? It's because our feet are particularly designed. Well, I don't know about designed, but they have the it's right ability, so porous nature, so they can absorb up through the feet. Um, yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Then because the Eastern traditions think of it as chi, that we're absorbing the earth's chi into our body and regulating our own chi, which would be another way of describing nervous system regulation. That's what.
Okay. Yeah. So going back to the ADHD brain, and
Mm.
I don't know how, like, if this is something you know anything of, so I'm just gonna ask it. But stepping outside of that perspective, is that something that would be able to take place? Would they be able to detach that, like, so if they wanted to look, oh, actually, from above down below, is that something that the ADHD brain would be able to process, or would be able to, like, have that thought
Mm.
process?
Good question. I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that.
Okay.
It's not something I've had experience of with anybody, I'd say.
I have a friend that I think I'll be able to ask and maybe
Mm.
find out some more information about that. So going back to the self-sabotage, like, so the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of success, the
Yeah,
self-esteem,
yeah,
and then bringing awareness to why it's there, it would be the first step. So
yeah.
after that step, what once we have that awareness of,
Mm.
actually, it's not me, it was my circumstances, it was this factor, it was this factor.
Yeah.
With that information, what would be, like, the next stage, do you think, that would need to take place?
Okay. So we'd want to challenge those negative beliefs. So there's a negative self-perception going on there, isn't there? So bringing, that I can't do this, I'm going to fail at this, I'm not good enough. So we'll challenge that with more self-affirming mantras and try and replace the beliefs in a way of, actually bringing attention to it and saying, oh, I've noticed that thought. Well, I need to change that. I need to challenge that. It's stuff that takes time, but it's about bringing attention to it. Um, we can then do things like set realistic goals in the way of small steps. And it's got to be realistic. We don't want to increase that sense of failure by putting something in that we can't actually manage.
Yeah.
So that's why I say about things like meditation, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Don't try and do something that you're gonna really struggle with first time round, and build on that so that you put in these small steps, but then you're building on it. Um, yeah, so developing a growth mindset is another way. So that can be like really expanding on information we already have, taking in more, learning podcasts, get the knowledge, understand how ADHD shows up, or self-sabotage, or any of these elements show up for other people, how they've overcome it. So get to know the topic really well,
Yeah.
get to know yourself well, get to know the topic well.
Yeah. So that the going back to the all, or like the small steps, I think, I don't know if it's a whole thing in ADHD, but a lot of the time it is going to that extreme. So for like, if somebody is unfit, for example, and they're putting an unrealistic goal, and they keep doing that, and then that's why they're stuck. So that's almost a part of the self-sabotage, putting unrealistic expectations on what they can achieve, like doing it, like, I don't know, for example, I haven't been to the gym for 3 years. I want to get fit, so I'm going to go every single day. Like,
Mm,
that is almost like, and I don't know if it's all ADHD, but that's a lot of what I see showing up within the
mm,
ADHD area.
mm,
And then for them to take the small step of working out for 20 minutes, or going for a walk for 20, it's just not, they don't see it as good enough
mm,
to do to
right,
get to where they want to be. So
mm.
how could that be broken down to, for understanding, like, that's a better way to do it than going to the extreme?
It's about being sustainable, isn't it?
Hmm.
So if I'm going to do this, I've got to make it so that I achievable, because if I'm, so it's knowing yourself well enough again, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's like, you see lots of these things on social media about, my ADHD brain when, and they've got, I don't know, it's a bit like maybe somebody's computer who's got ADHD, and you've got like a million, not a million, but a few
Loads of
tabs
tabs.
open.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that you've keen to know about all at the same moment. Or so it's like faddy. It's like seeing things as a fad. So this is my new thing. I found something online that I love, so I've bought loads of it. It's going to last me for 3 years. But of course, after 2 weeks of using it, you kind of the fad's gone, and you're into, So it's a little bit like that, isn't it? It's like
It's having
we're
that awareness that
recognizing.
that shows up, and that's what I normally do. So
That's it.
let's just pause and go back, do nothing about it, and then what could I do? It's almost like playing a game with it, isn't it? Like this is what I normally do. So let's actually not do that.
Mm,
Let's do the opposite to that and just do the first step.
yeah, and structure. Giving yourself a plan that because it would be so easy, wouldn't it, to like go to the gym every day and then get fed up with it. So it's like anything, you have to actually say, well, no, I need to put in a pause, a break in that in order to maintain my interest. That's another way of, seeing it, like actually planning. So if I'm good, so physical fitness has been my issue. I know what I'm like. I get into something and then it falls off and I get bored with it. So how can I recognize, bring that recognition into my planning for the next 6 weeks or
Yeah,
6 months, and say, okay, so, well, this is all going to be great while it's summertime to be doing those late night runs or early evening runs or whatever. And what am I going to do when it's getting dark? Let's plan ahead.
yeah,
Something else that's probably also difficult for PhD people to plan ahead.
yeah,
So this is the sort of problem, isn't it? Is that each thing we look at as a solution is probably going to be another issue for somebody with ADHD.
yeah,
So it does tend to be like that. It's like the very nature of recovery in these things. It's not helped with by procrastination, because then that's the very thing that's going to stop somebody getting to that, over that hurdle and onto the next step. So it's picking away in small ways that we can all the time, steps towards positive change and a positive mindset.
yeah. And then that like not being able to plan ahead is almost like having someone else do that for you and then giving you like right XYZ this week, that's all you need to do, so we need to think about is that,
Yeah.
and then the following week that person, for example me, I already know that's the long-term goal, that's the long-term plan, and if you do XYZ this week that's cool, and then we can go from next week, we can put that in place, and then it's so that part of it for them is eliminated, and then all they have to focus on is what's right in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I get said to me by clients, which is, I just want to be guided. I just want an instruction of how to do this, because I feel like I need somebody there to follow.
Yeah,
And that's somebody that's ADHD that's just recently said that to me. So I see the relevance for that. Yeah, really helpful to have a mentor or support. So the support needs to be in place. However, people receive that, isn't it? Don't they?
and it's also going back to that support element. I had a conversation where somebody didn't think that they should be having support, like, oh, why can't I just do this on my own? But it's the circumstances that are that a person is in dictates what they can and
Mm.
can't do on their own. They might not have the capacity, they might not have the space to even think about that because they've got so much else going on. So it's understanding that actually it's not a bad thing to ask for help, but it's not a bad thing to get that guidance and that support, because I know for me in my past, I've never wanted to ask for help because why can't I do it on my own? Like, and the moment I
Mm.
actually got help was the moment like relief was like taken. Oh, actually, no, it's okay. Like, and there is
Mm.
like steps. that I haven't seen before that are possible. So again, it's that growth
Yeah,
mindset, isn't it? Bringing it back to that growth mindset. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a step like that is going to help propel you forward.
yeah. So the ability to access support is a known part of element of recovery. So until somebody recognizes that they will at some point need to access support, until they give permission to themselves for that, that's always going to be a hurdle. You know,
Yeah,
it's one of the questions on the radar form that I ask new clients for the particular service that I work for. You know, can you rate your ability to access support? Well, that's how important it is that it's on one of our assessment forms. So, and the positive part of that is that it's good, you know, we want that to score high. We want that person to score highly, as in they do know they need to access support. So, you know, it's going to be another limiting self-belief that you don't need support, in fact.
yeah,
You know,
and
and it might look like support is a weakness, but
yeah,
actually it becomes a barrier if you can't access support. And that would be, I mean, you think about how that doesn't make any sense to not get support. That's like saying, well, what does support look like? That could be a visit to the GP if you're feeling unwell, and what does that not look like support? Could be going to the chemist for something, couldn't it? It could to say, I've got this problem, can you help me with it? Like maybe a skin problem or something. You know, there's going to be like support comes in many different ways and many different forms. So I think it's a very negative kind of position to be in if you think that you don't ever need any support, which we
yeah,
all do.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And then if you put it in a different context, for example, like athletes, like an athlete
Mm.
is
Mm.
getting so much support from so many different areas that is
Yeah.
allowing them to perform at that level. Like
Yes.
if you can tailor your life to get support in the areas you want growth in, that's only going to like just just get you to where you want to be quicker because you're getting expertise from like nutritionists, from like exercise. You're getting like 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 there was that study where um they looked at the sleep of the athletes and then that like enhanced the performance like literally just by changing again the changing of the pillows for the individual athlete like in the team like everybody had different pillows but it was like to to their individual needs and that's what you
Yeah.
know that's
Yeah.
it's bringing that awareness and then once that awareness is there taking the steps that like are haven't been there before and then once those steps are taken
Mm.
like that it enters like a new level of like
Yes.
a new level of living.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It'd be very limiting, wouldn't it, if you thought that you'd never need support? That's like somebody that is super successful in business saying, I don't need anybody else in my business. That's
Yeah,
another way of saying it.
yeah,
It's like a manager's got to be good at delegating. It reminds me of that. You know, you've got to be able to ask others to do a job for you at times. It's so like that, like there's a cyclist that cycled around the world and he had a whole team of support following him in motorhomes. You know,
hmm,
he wasn't going to be able to achieve that entirely on his own at that rate,
yeah,
complete it at that rate,
yeah,
because he'd have food ready for him at stops, you know, and have his supplements ready. He'd like he's all drinking, everything was like handed to him on the go.
yeah,
So he's not achieve it without that level of
yeah.
support.
And that was a high intensity thing, so it needed that high intensity support. Like, and then
Mm.
the support comes in at different levels. So, like, what somebody's high again, we go back to the individual. What somebody's high intensity is so for that athlete, it was like racing around the world, high intensity. Someone else's high intensity
Mm.
might just be getting out of bed in the morning. Like, so it's
Mm.
leveling in the support in in which it's needed. Like somebody might need that
Yeah,
intensity of support to get out of bed in the morning.
yeah. So that reminds me of people experiencing trauma responses who have shut down state and they literally can't get out of bed. You know, they're feeling very unmotivated. So what we'd do there is think about who could you get some help from, you know, in that way. So if you know that your friend's calling on you at 10 a.m. and coming in to see you and going to go with you to the gym, is that going to put the support in place for you to do the bit that will help you feel motivated to go to the gym? And then after you've been to the gym, you're going to feel super motivated, hopefully.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's what might be like, so it might seem permissible for somebody doing something like an intense round the world trip to have that level of support, but we all do need support, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Whatever level we're at, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to the, so it's challenge, so it's bringing awareness, challenging like the belief, setting the realistic goals, grow the growth mindset, the support
Yeah,
systems, and then
yeah,
self-love. Like once those things are in place, that
yes.
self-love can start to come into play. And that's, I guess, once all of that's in place, the understanding of, okay, this is okay, I'm okay, these are the environments that I'm now setting myself, this feels good, I can give myself some self-love. That's when those stages of like all of the things that you've built upon, you can then have that reliance in yourself, um,
Mm,
from that building you up. So actually, it's almost like getting to a stage where I feel good here. So now it's like a
mm,
new support system is needed, or like, so it's that again, that continuous growth. So
mm,
this, all of these
mm,
factors have got me to this level. I can sit at this level, enjoy this level, like reap the benefits of getting here. Um, okay, now where can I go? So if I've done this, now what's like the next support system, the next like areas of like
mm.
awareness, because it's that continuous, isn't it?
Yeah. So adjustments at each stage, there's adjustments and new awareness of who could help next or what do you need next. And also, I wonder if self-compassion is required at the beginning, you know, just in a little bit, which is giving you that desire to, you know, there's something about that being the point of the first step required. And is it possible to bring compassion to yourself if you had, even without a diagnosis of any neurodivergence, but you've identified it yourself, you know, because let's face it, it's going to be a long wait if anybody wants to, an official diagnosis
Yeah,
and an assessment. Um, then you know, using that as a, rather than it, I mean, it could be quite upsetting initially and a shock for people to understand that they might have some form of some diagnosis, but actually starting to see that as a strength, i.e. look at how I've coped through life even with that adversity, if it has, you know, because I don't think it has to remain an adversity, but
mhm,
if somebody has felt bad, you know, got all of this going, fear of failure, that will feel like a failure generally, or feel bad about themselves. They've maybe been clumsy in their life and people have always made a joke out of them. It could be all sorts of things that have led them to feel not great about themselves. So if there's, you know, if you can care about yourself, care about yourself enough to want to change, then see that as, you know, a compassionate step to,
yeah,
you know, keep that ball rolling of self-compassion, because that's what we've got to change, isn't it? If we keep doing self-deprecating thoughts and feelings, then we're never going to get, we need to change that to a positive will, not a negative. You know, we've been in a negative loop often. We need that to get into a positive loop, don't we, in order for
yeah,
change?
yeah. And it is literally, it just needs to be the tiniest amount to tip that weight transfer of like the
Mm,
direction it's going in. So like, do
yeah.
we continue in this direction, or do we just add in this little tiny bit of, oh, actually, this could be different.
Mm,
This
mm,
could, I could try this, or, and then
yeah.
that starts to tip that way, and then that starts to then
That's
spiral
it.
into
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Um, there was something that you just said that you touched upon there that I wanted to get, like that realization of like the almost that diagnosis, like self-diagnosing yourself with ADHD, or realizing, oh, X, Y, and Z happen. Oh, that's me. That links to that. Even if it's not a diagnosis, just understanding, oh, actually, I have these number of factors, that
Mm,
this could be the reason why X, Y, and Z, and not
mm,
taking it as, oh my God, I've got this problem.
mm,
It's not a problem. It's an understanding of, okay, that makes sense now. That's why I
mm.
did that. This is why I did that. And that's okay. And
That's
these are
it.
some of the things that I can put in place to help me
Yes.
to not go down that route, to then put that in place. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think, and again, it comes with that knowledge, that awareness and that knowledge. The more aware you can
Mm,
become of yourself, the more knowledge you can give yourself, the more you're going to then be able to implement things to change your life for the better.
yes. That's it. Absolutely. And there will be a process of an emotional reaction response to discovering any diagnosis, I'm sure, it's self or through from a professional. So it's okay to give time to that part, but also, there will be the other side of that, and people with ADHD are incredibly creative and passionate, and have great things about them, just like autistic people have amazing brains for detail and research and sticking to rules and boundaries, and so there are strengths
And it's
as well
playing to the
as
strengths, isn't it?
difficulty.
It's
Yeah,
like understanding your strengths, understanding yourself, understanding your strengths,
yeah,
and playing to those strengths.
yeah.
Because weaknesses are there, and and they don't even need to be. Um, it's not a negative. It's
Mm,
like again that support system where you have weaknesses, you just add in support, and then that can like just
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
rather
I love,
than focus on
yeah,
the weaknesses and try and improve the weaknesses. Yeah,
that's
they're there, but it's focusing on the strengths and going forward with the strengths, with people helping you with the weaknesses along the way.
mm, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, well, thank you for that. Is there anything else you think that you need to add?
I think that's it today. Thanks, George. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Good to see you.
You too. Bye.
Bye.